When I bought my house, I had this vision of suburban peace. Trimmed hedges, kids on bikes, neighbors waving with lemonade in hand. You know, the welcome to the neighborhood brochure fantasy. What I didn't factor in was the HOA from hell. At first, it was small things. A letter reminding me that my garbage can lid should face southward, not northward. Another note about how my lawn was 0.7 inches taller than the approved length. Yeah, apparently my grass was committing a felony. But I'm a pretty chill guy. I figured, hey, rules are rules. Maybe these people just like things tidy. Then came our HOA president. I'll call her Karen because honestly, I don't know a better word. Karen had the haircut, the clipboard, and the self-righteous smirk that screamed, I was born to ruin your Tuesday. Her first personal strike against me? My garden gnome. A cheerful little guy holding a fishing pole sitting by my walkway. One sunny morning, I found a violation letter duct taped to my door. It read, Unapproved lawn ornament. Remove immediately. $50 fine per day until resolved. A gnome. A literal 1-foot-tall ceramic gnome was apparently lowering neighborhood property values. I laughed it off. My wife thought it was hilarious too. We even named the gnome Carl, and joked about dressing him up for the holidays. But that little gnome was the beginning of a full-on war between me and Karen. And trust me, Karen does not lose wars, at least, that's what she thought. A week later, the letters started piling in like spam emails from a shady prince. First, lawn ornament removal notice. Then improper mailbox color. Apparently my black mailbox wasn't the HOA-approved charcoal mist gray. Yes, you read that right, charcoal mist. Because regular gray is just too low-class for our pristine paradise. Each letter came with a fine. $25 here, $50 there. By the end of the month, Karen's HOA invoices totaled nearly $400. I hadn't even been in the house 3 months. I tried to be reasonable. I emailed the HOA asking for a copy of the community bylaws. No reply. I called. No answer. Finally, Karen herself left me a voicemail. Hi, this is Karen from the HOA. I suggest you take compliance more seriously. We've worked hard to keep this neighborhood respectable, and if you can't follow the rules, maybe this isn't the place for you. Translation. Fall in line or get out. I wasn't about to let someone dictate how many shades of gray existed on my mailbox. So, I decided to start documenting. Every letter, every voicemail, every petty note Karen shoved in my mailbox. I kept it all in a binder. I even gave it a name. The Book of Karen. And oh, that book was about to become my most powerful weapon. By the time summer rolled around, my wife and I were burnt out from the constant harassment. So we did what any sane couple would do. We booked a 2-week vacation. Somewhere with no lawns, no mailboxes, and definitely no Karens. I let the HOA know I'd be away, just to avoid any abandoned property nonsense. I even asked my buddy to grab my mail so it wouldn't pile up. Day 1 of the trip, I felt the tension melt away. No passive-aggressive notes, no HOA patrols measuring my grass. Just peace. But of course, the peace didn't last. On day 4, I got a text from my neighbor, Tom. It said, Hey man, saw Karen snooping around your driveway this morning. She had a tape measure. A tape measure. On my driveway. While I was out of town. I laughed at first, but then something in my gut twisted. Why was she checking my property while I wasn't even home? I shrugged it off, convincing myself it was just Karen being Karen. But by the time we came back early, cutting our vacation short due to flight changes, I was about to find out just how far Karen was willing to go. And it would involve the cops. We pulled into our driveway a few days earlier than expected. Suitcases still in the trunk, sunburns fresh on our shoulders. And guess what was waiting on our door? Another bright yellow violation notice. This one read, Unauthorized vehicle parked in driveway. $100 fine. Please move immediately. The unauthorized vehicle? My wife's car. The same one she'd been parking there since day 1. As I stood there reading the paper, Tom walked over shaking his head. Dude, you've missed it. She's been out here every morning, snapping pictures of your yard like she's working for TMZ. Even saw her peeking through your side gate. Creepy didn't even cover it. That evening, we unpacked and decided to relax. But around 9 p.m., I saw flashing red and blue lights reflecting off my living room curtains. Karen had called the cops. Why? Because she thought our house was occupied by squatters, since we weren't supposed to be back yet. The kicker? Karen was standing in the street, arms folded, directing the officers like she was running an operation. But when the cops knocked and I opened the door, what Karen saw inside froze her in place. I opened the door, cool as ever. 2 officers stood there, hands resting on their belts, looking confused. Behind me, standing in the hallway, was my brother. Now my brother isn't just any guy, he's a police detective in a neighboring county. Badge on his belt, gun on his hip, and the look of someone who's seen enough nonsense to last a lifetime. Karen's jaw practically hit the pavement. I think there's been a mistake, she stammered. The officer next to her frowned. Ma'am, you said there were suspicious squatters inside. Karen pointed at me, then at my brother, scrambling for words. They weren't supposed to be here. They were on vacation. My brother stepped forward, flipping his badge open. You've been surveilling my family's property? And wasting police resources? That's a crime. The cops' faces shifted immediately. Karen's smug confidence drained faster than a phone battery on 1%. The officer turned back to her. Ma'am, unless you have proof of criminal activity, we're done here. Karen opened her mouth, then closed it. She actually looked like a fish gasping for air. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. That was the night I decided this war wasn't going to be fought quietly anymore. Karen wanted a fight? She was about to get one. After that cop incident, I pulled out the book of Karen. Every letter, fine voicemail. It was all there. I flipped through like a lawyer prepping for trial. My wife joked I should start charging admission. Step right up, see the madness of Karen, ruler of shrubs and mailboxes. I wasn't just collecting anymore. I highlighted contradictions, marked dates, and even noted when Karen herself broke the rules, like leaving her trash bins out 2 days past pickup, or the time she painted her shutters a shade not even remotely charcoal mist gray. Tom stopped by, and when I showed him the binder, he whistled. Man, that's enough ammo to sink her whole ship. He was right. But I needed timing. Exposing Karen too soon might make me look petty. Exposing her at the right time? That would be legendary. And with the annual HOA board meeting around the corner, I knew exactly when to drop the bomb. Of course, Karen wasn't slowing down. If anything, she ramped up her attacks. New letter. Holiday lights strung too early. Problem? It was October. I didn't have a single light up. Then came a fine for improperly stored hose. Yep, my garden hose was apparently a community menace. I confronted her in the street. Karen, you know none of this holds up in the bylaws. She smirked. That's the beauty of it. Nobody reads the bylaws. Big mistake. I read them cover to cover, sticky notes and all. Behind that smug grin, I could see cracks forming. She was nervous. She knew she was walking a fine line. And the closer the board meeting got, the more desperate she seemed. It was almost entertaining. Turns out, I wasn't the only target. Other neighbors started venting. Tom got a fine for noisy wind chimes. Sarah got one for overly bright porch light. Even old Mr. Henderson got slapped with a notice for non-uniform bird feeder design. We started comparing notes. One night, a small group gathered in my backyard, binder on the table, beers in hand. Dude, Tom said, flipping through. This is like the Dead Sea Scrolls of HOA corruption. We laughed, but the truth was serious. Karen had weaponized the HOA against everyone. That night, we formed a plan. Back each other up, share documentation. And when the time came, take her down publicly. The neighborhood wasn't just annoyed anymore. It was united. The final straw came a week before the meeting. A letter taped to my door screamed. Multiple violations. Property subject to lien if fines are not paid. A lien. On my house. Over a gnome, a hose, and an imaginary unauthorized vehicle. I almost laughed, until I saw how shaken my wife looked. That's when my annoyance turned into resolve. All right, I told her, holding up the book of Karen. It's game time. I organized every violation, every rule she broke, every witness statement from neighbors. It was like preparing for court, except the jury would be the entire community. And Karen had no idea the storm coming her way. The community center was packed. Karen strutted up front, clipboard in hand, radiating smug authority. She started listing violations like she was reading grocery items. Overgrown lawns, unapproved decorations. That's when I raised my hand. Actually, Karen, according to Section 4, subsection B of the bylaws, your shutters aren't compliant either. The room went silent. Gasps. Whispers. I walked up, dropped the book of Karen on the table with a satisfying thud. Here's every unlawful fine, every contradiction, and photos of your own violations. If you want to play by the book, let's play by the book. Her face went pale. For the first time ever, Karen had no comeback. Neighbors began speaking up one after another, and it was glorious. Tom stood up first, waving his violation notice for wind chimes too noisy. Karen, they don't even make noise half the time, he shouted. The room chuckled. Then Sarah held her paper high. A fine for a porch light? Meanwhile, Karen's floodlights could guide planes in for landing. The crowd erupted in laughter. Even Mr. Henderson, quiet 75, always feeding birds, spoke with surprising fire. You fine me for a bird feeder while your own dogs run wild and poop in other yards. It was like dominoes. Everyone had a story, and they all stacked against Karen. The room shifted. You could feel the power draining from her. The board members, who had been silent lapdogs under Karen, looked uncomfortable. Finally, one cleared his throat. This isn't what the HOA is supposed to be. We're here to protect the community, not bully it. Karen turned red, shouting about rules and standards, but nobody was listening anymore. The crowd drowned her out. Her authority crumbled right there in front of everyone. By the end of the meeting, a motion was called. Vote for new leadership. The applause was deafening. Karen's reign of pettiness was officially over. The following week, the entire neighborhood gathered for the special election. This time, the atmosphere was different, lighter, hopeful. The ballot went around, and the result was unanimous. Karen was out. For the first time, people actually cheered at an HOA vote. A new board was formed with reasonable neighbors. Folks who cared about fairness, not measuring lawns with rulers. Their first order of business? Erasing every bogus fine Karen had issued. The second? Rewriting the bylaws so loopholes couldn't be abused by another petty dictator. The changes were immediate. No more letters about hoses, wind chimes, or mailbox shades. The neighborhood finally felt like a community again. People actually started chatting over fences, waving on evening walks, even laughing about, remember when Karen fined us for that? As for me, Carl the gnome still stands proudly by my walkway. I dress him up with costumes for every season. Christmas, Halloween, 4th of July, you name it. Now instead of frowns, neighbors stop by to admire him. He's become a mascot of sorts. And Karen? She sold her house within months and moved away. Rumor says her new place doesn't even have an HOA. Every time I water my lawn, I grin at Carl. The gnome didn't just survive the war, he won it.